There's a full-blown hurricane outside. I don't know if you guys are used to this around here. I am not. I came in from Los Angeles, and we see rain like twice a year. So you guys don't seem to be panicked. So I'm guessing this is totally okay. Is this okay? Like, it's hurricane season. We literally just Googled it. This is fine? Okay, thank you. Right here. Thank you for the answer. 6 more months of this or till hurricanes? Am I going to die? There's alarms going off in the hotel today. All right, whatever. Thank you. I'm learning all kinds of stuff. What's kind of sad is that my career actually started in Miami when I was in high school, but I never took the time to learn weather around here. Anyways, so yeah, you guys are okay. You're all chill. This is all normal. So my name is Chad Gerber. What does it have me listed as up here? Oh, I don't know what I am. Oh, I'm a futurist. That's great. So I'm a musician. I got started when I was a kid because my parents made us take music lessons. I think it was more of a neurological thing versus the actual art because my parents don't really do anything with art, which is fine. I still love them. So I started on classical guitar as a kid, doing it, whatever. But I grew up in rural Montana, so there were some serious challenges as far as music and culture, considering it was me up there and like 4 or 5 cows. So I started on guitar. It clicked in at some point, that artist moment of where I was like, this is what I need to do with the rest of my life. And it was a matter of like, how do I do it? How do I do this from a rural community with banjos and mandolins? And I didn't want to do that. So I figured out that if I snuck into concerts that came through, I could pester musicians and managers into possibly giving me some tips and maybe some like hookups and stuff like that. There's a point to this, by the way, because this has to do with my technological intertwining of music and technology, which also gives me an identity crisis because I don't know what I am anymore. But basically, I would sneak in and bother these people until one day I happened to find a guy named John Kavanaugh, who is still by far the most incredible musician I've ever known, and he was from Miami. So I'm in high school and bother him, and I'm like, can I send you some demos? So I record demos on, I think I was doing like a little Walkman or something, but sent him off, and he's like, well, hey, we have like a youth camp or something down in Florida. How about I bring you in for it? See? Holy crap. And you guys are all still just like sitting there. Yeah, thank you. How is that? My phone is blowing up. Jeez. Oh, okay, we're inside, so we don't have to worry about that. Are we 3 stories, I think? Yeah, okay, so we're good. Okay. Jeez, I'm like over here having an anxiety attack, and you're all just like chilling. Anyways, so my buddy, he's like, why don't you fly down, and I'll have you do some music. So that was my first kind of professional gig. I'm in high school. I show up in Miami, and I'm like, I cannot believe people live this way. There's buildings, culture, music, art. And while I was here, he was like, do you want to record like a demo or something? So I was like, yeah, absolutely. So he put me in front of an ADAT player. Does anybody in here even know what an ADAT player is? Okay, there are literally 3 people. It's fantastic. Okay, so that's analog. It's like a VHS, but for music, recording. You can punch in, but it sucks. And you have to kind of like do like a one-take situation, all that. So I do this whole thing, and I'm excited. It's me finally using some technology. And then he goes, well, we have to transfer it to digital now. So we go to some studio, and they have a computer that's about like this big, and we put it into Pro Tools, and that's the first time I saw music visually, expressed in a DAW. So that was like, oh, okay, so technology is happening and all that. From that point on, the demo led to me getting a gig with some hip-hop group out of Dallas. So I'm playing guitar for this hip-hop group. Things are going good. I'm kind of like, things are coming together. And then everything dried up in music. I don't know how many people are even artists. How many people are artists, musicians? Are there no artists or musicians in here? What kind of conference is this? They left. They're smoking out back, aren't they? That's exactly what's going on. That's always what it is. Okay. Yeah, so anyways, so I record, I do all this stuff, and I'm touring and all that, but then it dries up, and I'm back up in Montana with nothing. So I'm in school getting a degree in, what did I get a degree in? Communications and media arts. But I'm super depressed, and it was actually a day, kind of like today. I'm in my apartment. It's above a tire shop. It smells like tires. And I'm like, I don't know how to get out of this situation. And again, still keeping technology over here. Basically, I had an ASCAP quarterly magazine that came through, and I called their 1-800 number. And I was like, I got a poor customer service person. I was like, how do I get out of here? How do I do music and all that? And she was like, well, I want to put you in touch with Wade in Los Angeles. And this random dude was like, send me some stuff and we'll decide. Because I was like, if I suck, please just tell me. I don't want to make this my life, you know. He says you should move to Los Angeles. So I pick up all my stuff, sight unseen, move to Los Angeles, where I begin doing the whole like music grind there. I can't make demos there because it costs me ridiculous amounts of money to rent out the studio space because they're still like 10 grand a day if I want to jump into a studio. So I'm not able to really make as many demos as I want. I'm bouncing around doing the different bands and projects. Rock bands turn into me fronting Warped Tour bands, and we're touring and performing. And as I'm doing this, the technology is becoming more and more flexible. Now it's on laptops. Now we have plugins. So I decided to launch this underground project called Woodrow Gerber. It's just my like electronic stuff that I like to do. And it was not feasible before, so I had to wait for the technology to finally get to the point where I could kind of like spend all day messing around with something in my laptop to make what I want, electronic music, etc. So once again, I'm pinned down by technology. That led to film and TV scoring, because all of a sudden now I had the ability to sort of make like a fake orchestra inside of my DAW with, you know, east-west, things like that. It's enough to fool the producers, so I don't have to hire a whole orchestra. And then the major labels call, so they're like, hey, we want you to start doing some stuff with these artists, songwriting, guitar. And the major label world operates entirely different than indie underground world. They have a template of exactly what you need to hit musically. So I'm songwriting, doing guitar, some guest vocal spots here and there. And for these sort of projects, you know, we fly into studios in Europe and Brazil, and now I'm living in hotels, which was nice at first, but after a while it gets kind of old. But what I found is that these producers are making these platinum hits. They're not going through the big houses anymore. We're doing it through laptops. We're doing some of them in hotel rooms with just plugins, which, again, I come from this analog world. Now I'm transitioning into this digital world. A lot of it seems like heresy to move away from this to this, but everything's becoming so automated. And it's opening up all these opportunities for me to try new things. And as artists, we can try all these new things because of the automation. And it's fooling people. It's enough to fool people, which, again, for professional mixers and engineers, this is awful, right? And I respect that process entirely. But as the labels and everybody's cutting our budgets down, we have to produce the same quality without a budget, which is where AI came in. So AI shows up. Now I have the ability to hand over the minutia that I hate, which is post-production. I hate mixing. I hate EQing. That's why I love people who do that, who are mixing engineers and can EQ stuff. But I have no money to give them to mix and engineer my underground stuff that nobody cares about, which is like Woodrow Gerber. So before I know it, I'm a part of the machine, and I'm using AI. I'm using AI to master. I'm using it to EQ. And companies like Lander, Isotope is building it into their systems. Cloud Bounce, but soon we're going to see it in everything. The DAWs themselves are going to have it, much like Photoshop. Right now in Photoshop, you can highlight something and say, you know, make it into a chicken. You know, just make it into a chicken. And it looks perfect. I don't know why I chose chicken. Not that that's like editing photos for chickens. But that's coming into what's going to be happening with these DAWs. So the AI element has just taken the post-production minutia and automated it to the point where I can now go back to focusing on what I'm actually decent at, which is going to be top line and melody integration and guitars and all that sort of stuff. But the byproduct of this AI boom is that all of a sudden, the generative AI has opened up a mass saturated floodgate of AI artists. Nothing against AI artists or what this is, but it poses a problem for professional musicians, people who have dedicated their lives. You can go ahead and sit down. This is super informal. There's a hurricane outside. Nobody cares. But basically, it opened up this whole thing where we already as musicians and creators, we're already battling with pinched budgets, right? And then streaming platforms decide you get pretty much no money for our product that we're selling, which I equate it to kind of like Walmart, right? They're like, well, if you put your T-shirt in our store and we sell it, we're going to sell the first batch. You're not going to get any money, but hey, you get good exposure. That whole never-ending cycle. So now we're competing as musicians against this massive influx of AI artists that are willing to work entirely for clicks and attention and going viral. Which, again, we were already competing musicians for gigs and what we could kind of get before. And then the AI opened up the ability for us to kind of like expand upon our work. But now we're kind of trying to navigate this influx of people who this is not their life. This is not what they've dedicated everything towards. But they're making music nonetheless. And they're really doing it for, not all of them, but for popularity. Like a kid in the room likes to make beats and whatever. They're totally okay with going viral and being the hot thing for a week or 6 months. And the labels, they see this, and they snatched it up because they're like, well, now we can basically sign artists for clicks, for exposure, and which it was already kind of going that direction. But now they have the ability to do a 360 deal for this person who just generates this music. They get their attention, they get some money in their pocket. 6 months later, they're done. I've worked with some TikTok artists who've survived this cycle, by the way, and they are phenomenal, but they're not AI artists, so I guess that's technically not related. But this cycle has created sort of a shift for musicians where musicians detest AI or they want to embrace AI, but they don't know how to make any money from what is happening. And that is because we are now entering into the creator-consumer culture, to where an industry, people on the top know this, is that the creators are the consumers, and they're making it for nothing because they're totally happy with other people just engaging with their content. And this, in and of itself, this is great. You know, people creating for each other is great. But I mean, arguably, they're not the ones creating it. It's AI that's creating these things, which that's another whole other topic. But it comes down to basically 2 lanes of artistry that we're heading into. The consumer creator model, where you're gonna have people who make AI. They're gonna put out a product, people are gonna like it, but it's not really, there's no story behind it, which arguably that is the whole point of being an artist, is that you're a creator with a story behind what you're doing. But it's going to take some while to kind of like take a bit of time to sift through this. So some of the generative AI platforms, I think somebody here is putting together some generative AI. What was the name of your company? So that's video, right? Yes, okay. Or music, okay. So, and I'm going to get to this. By the way, this might seem like doom and gloom talk right now, but I'm about to turn it around. It's going to be like this whole victory story. Yeah, right? So yes. So I'm going to show you like where AI is going to fit, how this is going to hopefully matter. So yeah, creator-consumer culture is what musicians and artists and people who've dedicated their life to this is now what they're up against, and it's daunting, and they don't really know what to do about it. And the consumer creator model, like these people are having a great time because everything's becoming gamified, everything's TikTok and streaming, and these companies are starting to implement this into their company. There's their platform, like Spotify. Spotify's making AI artists now, so they don't have to pay royalties. So you might be listening to a track that you're like, this is really cool. It sounds a lot like Dr. Dre, but it's actually an AI artist that they're putting into the system. It's got a little bit of a backstory to it, but they don't have to pay royalties on that because they don't like paying the 0.003 cents per stream as is. So they really just need to survive, you know. But this is happening. Obviously, the labels are part of this, so this whole shift is taking place. And where does that leave the artists? Where does that leave people who've dedicated their entire life to doing this? People who are like, ride or die, I'm a bass player to the end. You know what I mean? If bass can be simulated, it can be Gen AI. What's the point? And that is where, at this juncture, I believe we're actually sitting an opportunity. And it might not necessarily be through Gen AI music for some, but the majority of these tools that are truly going to impact music and musicians is all the generative tools outside of music. So for the first time, a musician has the ability to supplement what they're creating with visuals, animations, using AI for analytic development, being able to see like who's listening to what and why. So while the AI artist over here is making some cool stuff, the placement industry is now going to be snatching up AI music because they don't have to pay for it. The musician, the artist, has the opportunity now to usher in what I guess I would call the return of the polymath artist. We've been doing music for a while. You know, we have music, we have poetry, we got film, but with AI, we have the ability, we're heading into a direction where everybody is everything. And now we get to see what in the world does a musician see that goes along with their music. Majority of the visuals that I have for my music would cost me like millions of dollars because I can't afford Pixar to come in and animate something. And I mean, I'd have to say like one of the last major big video productions that sort of changed our minds on everything was what, Thriller? And that cost, I think, a couple $1 million to make it. So the ability to make something of that level has not been possible for indie artists, underground artists, and barely even major label artists. But now that's where we're about to be, as long as we look at it that way. So maybe you don't want to use generative AI to create a cello line in your song. And maybe you do. Maybe you suck at thinking about cellos and how to make orchestration for something. So then, yeah, grab that Gen AI and see what it does for you. I don't know the licensing on it. She would know because she's an attorney. That's a whole other thing, a whole other ballgame. But basically, we have the opportunity, the way that I see it, is that we have the opportunity to now approach this from a polymath perspective. And this applies to all kinds of industry as well. Obviously, I've come out from LA, so the film industry is freaking out about it. But, I mean, this is a sidetrack, but a friend of mine, his wife, is the stunt coordinator for a show called The Last of Us. I've never seen that show. Has anybody seen that show, The Last of Us? What is it? It's a video game, right? But we have an accident over here. Hold on. So she's basically trying to figure out what to do now because they're going to start AIing stunt people. And they don't need stunt people to jump off of cliffs anymore and breaking their neck because they can AI it. So she's trying to figure out like how to adapt to this change. Same with CGI effects, whereas they'd have like an army of people doing graphics and things like that. Obviously now it's going to be, it is becoming AI. Was it Sora is the big one. You right here, he's going to put everybody out of business in Hollywood. No, I'm just joking, man. But the thing is that people are going to use those tools. There's going to be a group of people that are going to be like, I'm going out of business, I'm going to die. And then there's going to be people that are like, I'm going to make cheeseball stuff. And then there's going to be people like, how can I elevate my art and my craft to the next level? And that is to me the key piece of what is happening and people are freaking out about, but they're not looking at it. Partly because maybe we're lazy. Musicians, we just want to like lay around and make music, and it's hard work to expand upon this stuff. But we really are at this nexus of what is about to happen, as long as we use the tools in a way that supplements and complements what it is we're already trying to do. So the best example for me is the Sphere in Las Vegas. I think you all know what that is, right? It's like a $2 billion dome. And it is absolutely revolutionizing how music and entertainment is done. So I mean, the technology on that alone is just mind-blowing, but that's where we're at. Like, it's up and running, and when you're in Vegas, it's very cyberpunk, kind of dystopian. I love it. I'm not gonna lie, I love it. But we're heading in that direction as well as musicians, because if we look at it this way, for the first time, we have the ability to, and this is coming from, we've had meetings with Meta. Did I even say why I'm involved with this stuff? Oh, yeah, Meloscene is, I created some spatial VR technology that allows for musicians to go into a spatial VR music studio. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we can meet inside our virtual studio and make music together with real instruments, with our own DAWs. You don't have to poke at the air and do weird stuff like that. But that's the spatial computing element that is happening. The other company startup that I have is called ShadowGen, because I got some pending patents on AI latency technology to kill all kinds of latency. But what we're doing is we're heading in this direction to where even the live entertainment experience is about to shift dramatically, because Meta and these other companies are working on these VR, AR glasses, to where when you go to a coffee shop in the near future, instead of just you being there on a stool playing the guitar, anybody who has these glasses is going to be able to put them on and experience essentially what you would experience in the Dome in Las Vegas. But you have to be able to put together those sorts of visuals. So if you want to be in an underwater aquarium or whatever, that's something that the artist does not have several lifetimes to learn how to do with Blender and Unity and all these other programs. But with AI, they can supplement their art with that. So they could have manatees swimming around in the coffee shop while they're playing music. And honestly, what on earth is a manatee in the first place? Is that related to the seal family? What is that thing? Like, I've seen them floating around in the water with scars all over their backs. They're adorable, but I honestly don't know what they are. What are they fighting? Like, right? Like, there's a whole, that's a whole other cause. You know what I mean? What are manatees doing down there? Why am I talking about manatees? Right, so basically you're gonna need to know how to use these tools, these AI generative tools, to supplement your art if that's what you want. Big giant manatees floating around in the coffee shop while you're making your music. This is what's gonna set you apart. The other thing, especially with spatial computing and AI, is that we're leaving the era where your end product is what you make money from. Not that your end product is what you're making money from right now anyways, because of the streaming model. Obviously, these are all broad strokes. I know that there are people that are selling vinyl and whatever else and killing it. That's fantastic. That's never going to change. Everybody has loopholes and different ways they can do it. But we are leaving the age of I do this to make this, and then I get paid, because very few people are getting paid anyways. Now we're getting into this area of where we're going to monetize the creative process, and this is where spatial and AI come into play. Is that people can go into your space with you, you can monetize the door, and they can just hang out with you while you produce music or score a film or do whatever you want, or you can do production lessons. But people are going to get involved with the artist's journey for the first time, because the artist's journey is going to be extremely creative and in depth, whereas before, we're all just in seclusion sitting in front of our laptop. So this is opening up a whole new type of thinking of how in the world we're going to navigate this creator-consumer culture where everybody's smashing out 10 million tracks a day that sound amazing. But where's the artist's story? And that is where we're going to make our money, is by selling our story and who we are, because that cannot be duplicated by AI. The product can be duplicated by AI. The graphics can be duplicated by AI, but the story cannot. You cannot duplicate a human being's story. Even artists that suck have amazing stories, and that's what people buy. Not to throw Bob Dylan under the bus, but the dude's voice is not what people would consider to be great. But they love the story. They love the persona and aura of Bob Dylan, right? But he lives in a time when he sold music. But if he lived in a time now that we're heading into, he would have to sell his story. Then that's something that you cannot duplicate. They're going to try it, but you can't duplicate it with AI. So in my opinion, where we are headed, this is actually a gift. We're heading into the resurgence of polymath, the expansion of art, if we look at how it supplements exactly what we're trying to say. So again, going back to if you're making music, maybe you're a saxophone player, and that's all you want to do, but people are like, I don't want to listen to an entire album of just solo saxophone. You can supplement it. You can create something different around it. You can create a visual experience that you can go into through AR, VR, etc. But you have to use these tools outside of what you're used to do it. So we could talk later if you want about the production tools and the generative AI tools for music specifically, but to be honest with you, there's 10 million showing up a day, on the music front. So I'd say just Google it, or the easiest one is to go into ChatGPT and talk to it and say, what are some good AI production tools specifically for what I'm doing, which is this, this, and this, and then it'll spit it out. But then you'll be able to go in and go, I've been stuck on this for a while. Now I'm going to take this AI tool and I'm going to expand upon it. And now I have something new to show the world for the first time. So all those songs that are lost on a hard drive because you don't know what to do with them, now they can probably come back out and you can do something with it. So this is an opportunity for us to flex, for musicians to flex, for artists to flex, because we're leaving the age of just being limited and stuck to having to spend, money in a big old studio. I used to have to do that. Oh my gosh, I got in such a cycle when I was starting out with demos, where I would send these demos to this contact at Sony, and they would be like, "Oh, this is phenomenal, we love it." And I was making fried chicken at Ralph's, which is a grocery store in LA. So I'm making fried chicken, and I'm taking my chicken money, and I'm spending it on studio time. I send it to the label. The label's like, "Oh, this is phenomenal. We need you to send more." And I'm like, "Okay, let me fry some more chicken." So I fry some more chicken, get that chicken money, go back to the studio, and so it's just kind of going on, and I'm spending all this money on this, and that's when I got to that point where I was like, well, I wonder if the tools are here to where we can sort of expand upon things without paying out the nose. So, opportunity. That's where we're headed with AI if we use these tools that supplement what it is that we do. Now, normally I would wrap stuff up and be like, hey, you guys are great, and let's all go freaking die in a hurricane. But I am curious how many people in here, this is a bit of a different perspective, I think, from some of the other people I've talked at the conference, because this is more from the artist side, in a way. But I would be really curious, for my own benefit, to know if anybody has any questions or input on sort of where we're at, since this is so new. So do you guys care if we sort of do a little Q&A hangout session, since it's a rainy day, and we're all intimate together? Is that cool? Does anybody have any questions to kind of kick off the artist perspective? I mean, honestly, you can ask whatever you want. I'll answer virtually anything. But does anybody have any questions about this? Yes. Should I throw a microphone? Oh, shoot, she's got a microphone. She's throwing phones around? Sorry, I feel like that's my fault.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for sharing your perspective.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to pick your brain a little more about you kind of in the beginning talked about the harm maybe to artists, but what is your thoughts on the consumer? Do you think similar to streaming, like so much music is released daily because of the tools from you being able to record in your home and not
Yeah.
having to fry chicken?
Yeah, right.
So, do you think the consumer would ultimately, you kind of talked about it with the story, but dissect the original or unique art coming from AI or not AI?
I think in the beginning, like anything new, we, especially in America, we go freaking nuts for it. So I think in the beginning, we're gonna be stoked about AI music. But I think it's gonna, once it settles, I don't know how long it's gonna take, it'll kind of go the way of like graphic design. So graphic design, which is great. People don't really go to a graphic design gallery opening to see, images of the McDonald's logo. But I think it's gonna kind of like settle a bit, and then I do think it's gonna kind of be it'll find that balance. But I think the key component for artists is understanding that we're not limited to the old model of just, I made this, now I'm going to sell it. If we can understand that, that's going to separate us so that when people are like, buy my thing, it's AI or whatever, they're not going to make any money really from it anyways, because there's no money in streaming and it's going down, especially since Spotify just changed all that up. I don't know if you knew that, but you can't get paid unless you have the 1,000 streams to even start getting paid. So that's where I see it going, is that people will at first be gung-ho about it, but then they're still going to go back to that, like, especially if the artist presents the story. You know what I mean? Like if the artist is like, this is where I'm from. Again, like I came from Montana. I bounced around like a circus performer, landed in Los Angeles. Like there's some interest in, it's not that interesting, but everybody's got interesting stories, whereas the AI, somebody's smashing out AI, people are like, well, what's your process? Well, my process is I typed in song. And like it's going to have a limitation to it. And again, I'm not saying there's not a place. There's absolutely a place for it, but that's the way that I see it going. Yeah. And thank you for that question. Does anybody else have any input, questions? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how you brought that around full circle, where the artist is sort of being attacked by the labels and everybody selling them out. And then you got to the point now where you're saying, music is the creation of the artist.
Yeah.
That's where it all began. And now we have some additional tools that we can use. Why shouldn't the artist capitalize on this?
Exactly.
Why should he not be at the top
Yes.
in this? And I see that the way you presented it, that this is a great opportunity for artists.
Yeah.
Instead of letting other people that might usually be doing something else and having to do anything with music to get ahead of the game. I
Right.
think you're right. Artists need to be motivated to really push AI.
Yeah, thank you. And honestly, I think that we're in a good spot. This is so horrible, but artists kind of musicians specifically, sort of got screwed over first when internet and streaming hit. And like it's debatable, obviously, you can debate all day. Do we get screwed over or not? But musicians were the first ones where all of a sudden it was like, hey, our product is not worth anything anymore. And then when it started to happen, piracy for film and all that, film and television, and the unions and everybody went to war over it, and they went straight to the government and they're like, hey, you got to ban these piracy sites, and they won-ish, I guess. But we've been on the sidelines since Napster and all that. My attorney was a part of making Napster legal, but it was kind of, the system had already been set up. I mean, if we really want to get into it, what happened is that the tech industry went to the label industry and said, CDs are dead. Do you guys want to get in on this streaming thing? And the labels, per usual, said, no, that'll never happen. No one wants to do that. And they were wrong, which they've, I think, been wrong 100% of the time on technology shifts. But basically, that's where we sort of have an advantage, is that we saw what happened. People didn't really care necessarily, but now we can see what's happening now in film and TV. It's freaking out, whereas I'm like, we have the cutting edge now. We saw what happened last time. This time we're prepared. We just have to supplement our art, because every artist sees or has something else that they cannot contribute to the music that they're making, because they're limited. But now we're unlimited. So like, I think this is going to be, I'm hoping that this is going to be the time of where artists, especially musicians, really, really, really like show up. And then AI can't compete with human innovation, no matter how hard and how many data points and machine learning models we have. So that's my hope. But thank you for agreeing with me. It makes me feel better about myself. Does anybody else have any input or questions? Yes. One of these days, I just want to see somebody throw a microphone all the way across. Yes. Oh my gosh, that would make my week.
So if I understand,
Yeah.
you are advocating, or the future is the artist in his or her creation,
Yeah.
and people accompanying that artist rather than the final product.
That's one of the main models, yes.
And so the poet laureate of Miami, he or she would enclose himself in a room,
Yeah.
and they would charge tickets to come in and see that person create or share that space with them creating the art.
One way. It's going to be fragmented. So that would be good for spatial. So like what happened is when streaming came out, all of a sudden for me personally, for my underground stuff, I went from having like you have your local fan base and then it expands. And all of a sudden like, well, I got fans over the world, but I can't tour to 15 people in Brisbane, Australia, and then 10 people in Mongolia. I have to bring them to meet. So for the first time through these different technological platforms and like Meloscene, the thing that we're working on, people, you can then go, hey, I'm doing a whatever Friday night, 5 o'clock this time, everybody come in, and you get to bring in that fragmented digital audience. But when it comes to live performance, live interaction, let's say in Miami, you could then go, I'm going to perform down here, and there's a projection mapping element to it to where the building itself is going to be animated through projectors and AI graphics. So it turns the artist into from a one-trick pony into a 35-trick pony, which diversifies all the different types of revenue that you can collect, just depending on what your art is and where you see it fitting with your group, basically.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because I don't know about you, producers are the most, like, they're recluses, and like they sit in there on their computers all day, and now they can start making some money. Deadmau5 is already doing it through Twitch. He just puts a camera up and basically has a tip jar kind of thing, and you just sit there. I don't find that personally interesting to sit there and watch producers click away, but there's a lot of people that do. So yeah, it's just that fragmented element. Anybody else have any? Yeah.
Do you think that,
follow-up question?
Just the limited inventory. I don't like using that word inventory, but you're the poet and you're in your room, and by dint of it being so specialized, could you charge more for admission? Could the $15 tip jar become the $1,500 tip jar?
Exactly. It's exactly it. And that is what we are doing with Meloscene, is allowing for the person to set it. So they might be like, I'm going to be performing or writing. I'm doing a writing camp, whatever. $5 at the door, you all can come in. But then if someone's like, I'm packing this thing out, or I need to bump it up to $500, $5,000. The thing is that we're no longer trapped by the end product, which the CEO of Spotify just said is worth nothing. The production process is worth nothing, etc. This is the artist's way of being like, cool, you want to chase the end product. I am the product. I am what's valuable for the first time, and I can monetize myself, and there's no way for you to duplicate me and what I'm capable of, nor can you put me in a box. So if I'm a rapper, you can't tell me I can't have visuals. Maybe I'm going to have a visual experience next month entirely. A label would be like, well, that's not how we do things. It's like, well, goodbye. Because like you all can keep the pennies, not even pennies, fractions of a cent. Keep them. I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm monetizing myself now, and that is, in my opinion, that's where we're headed with this technology if we use it right. This applies to everyone, but that is what this is going to provide us. Yes, purple shirt. Wait, is that purple? You're right. These lights are so bright, I can't see any of the like.
Hello? Hi.
Hi.
I'm Sarah Rushnick, and I'm from the University of Miami.
Oh, nice.
And I'll be speaking with a group tomorrow, and I want to thank
Very cool.
Jean-Marie for putting
Seriously,
on this
Jean-Marie.
great.
Thank you.
He
Seriously,
really
for
deserves
real.
a round of hand, and especially we're going to be flooded down here. We'll be together for the whole night. So what I see here, and I think you have a really good point, and where I'm trying to do it is, you can almost see that everybody becomes their own brand.
Yes.
So, and then you take out, in a way, in between, you can take out that middleman
Yep.
that you think about in between. And I don't care what you do, you can be then take control and have
Yes.
agency. Then what I can see, and we've been trying to do that, and I like how you're doing it, is that you can think about that hybrid approach. How I was teaching before is I was always teaching, I teach business technology, the AI,
Very cool.
machine learning.
Yeah.
And before even COVID, I was trying to say people need to collaborate with each other. Plus, there's something about being together, right?
That's the magic.
I think about even when we think about the internet, what was happening in the internet, what made the internet so great? Do you know what really promoted the internet? I was at the very beginning of the internet. Any ideas?
Chat
It's
rooms.
really pornography. Basically,
my second guess.
pornography really just took it up. But think about it. Porn doesn't replace real sex, right? It may be in addition to that, but it's still people are having babies, right? So the idea here is to take that same thing, is that hybrid approach,
Yeah.
that you're a musician or you're an artist. One of the things when I go to art shows, one of the things I'm disappointed, very few people are actually doing their sculpture there or doing their painting.
Yes.
Because wouldn't you like to see, why do you buy a piece of art? Is I want to see the story behind it.
Exactly.
I want then to be able to take and basically know you through your art. Even to me, it's more interesting. How did you get there? How did you make that sculpture?
Exactly,
And it's the
yeah.
same thing in music that you can think about. There's no replacement for me being in the concert.
Exactly.
Actually being in a concert and feeling that vibe in my chest, right? And being with groups of people. Why we always had that is not there, but there's still an idea that it doesn't need to replace. So even when you're at the concert, you can then be broadcasting live yourself.
Yep.
You can then be able to bring in your crowds that weren't be able to get those tickets. It's not going to take away from that and be that hybrid. So I see the idea of AI. It can be actually, you want to see how can I work together, that if I'm developing a song, then there's always, you're going to try to go to somebody and say, what am I missing here? I need something to finish off the song. I need something to end, and you can do it. So this gentleman in the back here, what is your name? Max, what he was saying I thought was beautiful. The idea of even having a writer or an artist, what I'm interested in is their process.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's basically that process. How do you write a poem? How do you write something? How do you write music? So I think we can think about it, and I don't think anyone, you can think about it as, I don't care what you do, right? If it's photography, the idea, or creating anything that you create, it can be aside there. So I really give you credit. My only other point here, since we are raining, we might as well stay, is the idea of what is this Meloscene. So I need to have the equipment now. I need to have something like Apple Vision here that I need, or I need to have a HoloLens.
All you need with Meloscene is a headset. And then what happens is that I pull in your laptop, your tools, you plug in your real instrument, but inside, you and I are having this conversation and working on a track, and you could be in Singapore.
Okay, so but it's not part of you're not doing
The AI
AR,
element was what I'm
or
saying.
the AR. Are you doing this as an AR
It's
element?
right now it is VR, and as the headsets progress into being mixed reality,
But it's
then
but
AR.
it's not. So give me a scenario. How would it work?
It's like right now the way we use it is
Yes.
that my producer is in Amsterdam.
Okay.
And what we do is, because majority of the creative process, that magic that happens is in person. So the idea was, I mean, it's based on some science, 68% of human communication is nonverbal. Technology essentially removed almost all of our communication since it's text-based.
Okay.
So the idea was, how do we
Yes.
recreate that magic? So what happens, I go, okay, let's go in and work on the track. I put on my headset, I grab
Yes.
my guitar, he puts his headset on in Amsterdam, and then we are together in a studio
Okay.
together. And other people can come in as well from anywhere in the world. So like when we did on the BBC, we had him in Amsterdam, me in London, drummer in Los Angeles, jumped in, and we made a track together in that space. As the technology is evolving, then we move into the augmented reality to where we can then provide this for
So you're
mixed.
selling this as a product now?
Yeah, so basically this is the software that we have the patent pending and all this garbage and all
Okay.
that stuff.
So if I wanted to buy, I can now go today and.
You will once we get finished.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
almost
You're
into
on that
beta.
process that
Yep.
you want this that I download. And this is for artists.
Artists and fans. Fans can just jump in with a headset, If the artists want to bring in their system, their DAW and all that, their creative software, then they have to buy the software. And I don't remember how much is the software, Julie. $20. $20 gets you inside.
Gets
So-
me as a fan.
Yeah,
inside.
and actually we talked with the University of Miami when we were at CES last year, some of your colleagues, about we are going to start implementing the system into colleges because online music is a nightmare. You
Well,
cannot.
tomorrow I'm having someone from the music engineering school come. So you may want to.
I'm in sessions tomorrow for the rest of the week up in
Oh.
Tampa. So
Okay,
let's talk.
Maybe, okay, but
Let's
maybe
just talk
we
right
could-
now. Let's just do this right now.
But the whole point,
Yeah.
the whole point would be to have the hybrid approach,
Absolutely,
right? And
100%.
what would be nice is that hybrid approach. That this conference, maybe later on, then you could basically, we could have
Exactly.
you come in
Yeah,
and basically show it. Okay.
exactly.
Thank you.
Who else is speaking tomorrow? Raise your hands, who else you are.
I'm missing
looking
all
forward to that,
kinds of
guys.
good stuff.
Okay, great.
Chad, thank you so much. I'm
Thank you
digging your
so much.
pants.
Thank you so very
love
much, everyone. You're
Guys,
super cool.
thank you.
We're gonna make it
Applause
through
for
this
Chad
hurricane
and everyone
together.
that came in here.